Hello, and today we're going to look at how to complete the square with quadratic equations. I'm only interested in the method, not the proof in this video. So if you're after a definitive proof, go and look somewhere else. But how to complete the square? We're going to use x squared minus 10x plus 3 as an example. It's very straightforward. What we do is we look at the x coefficient, that is the number beside x. We're looking at this part here, x squared minus 10x. The number beside x is minus 10. We're going to half that and put it inside this bracket. So minus 5. In the bracket, we've got x minus 5 all squared. 5 squared is 25, and we subtract that. There's always a subtract, and then bring down this 3 equals 0. So plus 3 equals 0. And then simplify it. So that's half the x coefficient, put it in a bracket squared, and square that x coefficient and subtract it. So x minus 5 all squared minus 22 equals 0 is your answer. It's always that method. We'll try it again with two more. This time we're going to complete the square of x squared plus 28x minus 4 equals 0. And the method again will be the same. We're going to have a bracket squared. We're going to have half the x coefficient in that bracket. We're going to square the x coefficient and subtract it, bring down the other parts, and simplify. So our question is x squared plus 28x minus 4 equals 0. We're going to start by looking at these two terms. We put in our brackets squared. X plus half of 28 is 14. Square the bracket. Square 14 and subtract it is minus 196. Bring down the minus 4 equals 0. So minus 4 equals 0. And then simplify what you've got in front of you. So your answer is x plus 14 all squared minus 200 equals 0. Very straightforward. I'm going to try one more. This time we'll try x squared minus 3x plus 1 equals 0. Now this one's slightly trickier because half of 3 is going to give us a decimal or a fraction. When you're completing the square, it's almost always easier to work with fractions, not with decimals. The reason for that is that you can square fractions much easier in your head than you can a decimal. The method is the same regardless. So we're going to start with this bit. We're going to have our bracket squared. Half of minus 3 is minus 3 over 2. Square that. 3 squared and 2 squared gives me 9 over 4. And then we bring down our plus 1 equals 0. And then simplify it. Minus 9 over 4 plus 1 is the same as minus 9 over 4 plus 4 quarters, which should be minus 5 quarters, or minus 5 over 4 equals 0. So, to solve an equation by completing the square, this time we want to find the values of x. We're going to start by completing the square first. So again, same method as before, half the x coefficient, square it and subtract it. Simplify our answer. Half of minus 8 is minus 4, 4 squared is 16, subtract that. And minus 16 plus 3 is minus 13. From here, it's very simple algebra. We're going to move the 13 across the equal sign by adding it to both sides. Then we're going to square root everything. The square root of x minus 4 all squared is simply x minus 4. And the square root of 13 is plus or minus root 13. There's always a positive and a negative answer when you square root something. From there, move the 4 across, and you should have 4 plus or minus root 13. Now, if your question says leave your answer in third form, you have finished. This is third form because there is a square root in your answer. It may not say that. It may say put your answer as a decimal. If you're putting your answer as a decimal, then you need to break up your answer into two separate things. So we have 4 minus root 13 and separately 4 plus root 13. Remember, there are two answers because of the plus and the minus. And it's dead easy after that. Simply use your calculator, type your answers in, 4 minus root 13 and 4 plus root 13, and you should have those two decimals, 0.39 and 7.61. Now, for a harder example of completing the square, we're going to look at 3x squared plus 12x minus 1. What makes this more difficult is that there is not a coefficient of 1 in front of the x squared. There's a 3 in front of the x squared. So to resolve this, we take out a factor of 3 from the first two parts. So if I factorize 3x squared plus 12x, I have 3, and then my bracket, x squared plus 4x. It's very straightforward after this. I'm going to complete the square of my orange bracket here. So that gives me x plus 2, and then outside 2 squared, subtract the 4. multiply all of that by 3, and then my minus 1 equals 0. I'm then going to expand my brackets. So I have 3 multiplied by x plus 2 all squared. Take away 3 times 4, which is 12, and then take away the 1 equals 0 at the end. And then simplify my answer from there. So 3 bracket x plus 2 all squared minus 13 equals 0. So we're going to try one more hard example. This time we're going to complete the square of 2x squared plus 3x plus 16. Again, this is difficult because there is a 2 in front of the x squared. So as before, we factorize the first two terms. We take out a factor of 2. Taking out a factor of 2 from 3 leaves me with 3 over 2. So 2 times 3 divided by 2 gives me the 3. And as before, I'm going to complete the square as I've done with my orange brackets. So half of 3 over 2 is 3 over 4. I'm going to square that and subtract it. 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16. Around that, I'm going to put a big bracket and I multiply by 2 since all of this orange part is being multiplied by 2. And then my plus 16 equals 0 at the end. Then going to multiply out my 2 through these two parts. So I've got 2 times my bracket, 2 times x plus 3 over 4 all squared. 2 times 9 over 16 is the same as 18 over 16. This can be simplified, but I'm not too worried about simplifying it yet. I'll do that in my next step. And plus 16 equals 0. And my last step is to simplify this down. So I have 2 by my bracket, all squared. And I'm just punching minus 18 over 16 plus 16 into my calculator. And I get 23 over 2 equals 0. And finished with that one. Last example, we're going to complete the square and solve 2x squared plus 16x minus 1 equals 0. Now, because this is a harder one and we're solving it at the same time, there are many, many steps to this. So we'll do a little bit at a time. And again, my first step is to take out a factor of 2 from the first two terms. So I've got x squared plus 8x in my orange bracket. I'm then going to complete the square of the orange part and multiply all of the orange part by 2. So I've got my plus 4 in my bracket, 4 squared is 16, I'm taking that away, and a big 2 around all of that, and then my minus 1 equals 0 right at the end. And as before, I'm going to multiply through by the 2. So I've got 2 times my bracket, and 2 times 16 is 32, and then my minus 1 equals 0. It's very straightforward algebra after this. Minus 32 minus 1 is going to give me minus 33 equals 0. I'm going to add 33 to both sides of my sign here. So I've got 2 by x plus 4 all squared equals 33. I'm going to divide by 2 next. So I've just got my bracket, x plus 4 all squared equals 33 divided by 2. Then I'm going to square root both sides. So x plus 4 equals positive or negative root 33 over 2. Do you remember the plus minus when you do this? And then take away 4 from both sides. And I'll have my answer in surd form, minus 4 plus or minus root 33 over 2. You can use a calculator to turn it into a decimal from there. Do feel free to like and subscribe if you find these videos useful.